Hey everyone, welcome in Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes day by day. Thanks for being here. Today's the 10th of May. Tomorrow's Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day if there happen to be any moms watching. I feel like there's got to be at least a couple. But of course, whether they watch this video or not is anybody's guess. Let's get into it. What's happening today? Today was, as I said in the free play show, today was one of those days where it starts out good, then it got better, and then it got difficult, and then it got frustrating, and here we are. So, yeah. I don't want to rehash excuse me, sorry about that. What I talked about in the free-to-play episode, it was, talked about life. It's like, so one of those things when you talk about it once, you don't want to necessarily rehash it because it wasn't really, I don't know. Anyway, enough of that. How many crystals do we have saved up? We have well to 9. I kind of want to get back to 1,000. You know what? Screw it. Let's not do that. Let's not. Well, the other accounts can save up. We're not going to do that. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to go back to what we were doing before the whole double drop thing. We're going to start building characters again. So we're going to go Fennec Shan, and then we finished what's his name, and we're going to go back to what's her name? Shakti. I gotta tell you, I don't know. I watched an interview watched a video with the cast of Andor, and they were talking about, what's it talking about? Their on-screen or their actual real life spouses who they're with. And it was interesting to hear that. I mean, it was enlightening to hear that the guy who plays Luthen, and it's like, of course, they can never get the name of these characters right from the show, but the guy who plays Luthen, well, he's Swedish and he's got 8 kids. I was like, okay. And I get divorced, and the lady he's with now is like, I don't know. There's only one way to say it. There's only one way to say it that comes to mind, and I'm not going to because, I don't know. It's totally not a bad thing. Yeah, but it was thing. And then Bix, Bix is with Jason Momoa, and I'm like, hello. I'm like, really? Because he's talking about bikes. I'm like, and the reason I said hello was not because of anything weird, but I was like, oh, it's just like, because you don't think of being with Aquaman or whatever. It's just, but the fact that he likes antique bikes and she's into bikes, motorcycles is interesting. I know that because a lot of people are into like Harleys and stuff, and I just find it interesting that Jason Momoa happens to be into vintage motorcycles or older motorcycles. I just thought it was interesting. And then the gal who plays Dedra was just, oh, of course. That's exactly what I thought. And then, Genevieve O'Reilly was just, okay, I can see that. And then everybody was pretty much pretty on brand. They didn't cover everybody. because there's a secret out there that Clea is really access, and it would have been nice to know more about her, Elizabeth Dua, but it'll be fine. I didn't realize that Evan Skarsgård was the one guy from Dune. He was the guy that I think Sting played back in the movie, back in the day or something. I don't know. Sting was in the movie. I think maybe he was that guy's lieutenant. But anyway, enough about that. So we farmed. So we went back to farming people. So now we're gonna I did spin down back to our hundreds as I got distracted. And I know this is totally gonna be, you're gonna be like, okay, what's this guy doing? And just chalk it up to just one of those days. It's just one of those days. Because it really was. It's just one of those days where you think that you know exactly what's going to happen, or you have a feeling you do. And then it kind of goes like nothing goes that way. And like I said, it was good, and then it got better, and then it got weird, and then it got angering, and then here where we are is frustrating. The good thing is I get to see an amazing football game. Guys, if you're not into the spring football stuff, because you're not into football, or B, you think spring football is garbage, I can't help you, because the spring football, so I always tell you that the UFL, when it started, the offenses were way behind the defenses. And like every week you see it progressing and getting better. And now that we're to week 7, like the game I watched today was Michigan at Arlington. And they're both really good teams. Arlington has what is said to be the best defensive league in the league. And Bryce Perkins, who is the quarterback for the Michigan Panthers, who actually won a Super Bowl. He was Matthew Stafford's backup back when the Rams won the Super Bowl. The guy he's not quite Lamar Jackson. He's not quite Lamar Jackson, but he definitely has Lamar-esque qualities. And it's just really impressive to see a guy be able to do that type of stuff. It's just really impressive to see a guy playing spring football, because you think that these people have absolutely no talent, that they're just scrubs, that they weren't good enough to play in the league. And these are all guys, a lot of them have spent a lot of time in the NFL. Just for whatever reason, they don't happen to be now. And Bryce Perkins, this quarterback from Michigan, he's really good. He did a move. He did something with 1 second left in the game. He got tackled at the 1.5 yard line with 1 second left in the game. The coach immediately calls timeout. They have 1 second left in the game. They're down by 6. The last play of the game, they run. So it's either going to go to overtime or they're going to win. Or they're either going to lose, or they're going to go to overtime, or they're going to try to go for a extra point. Hands the ball up to this running back who had been cut the previous 2 years in training camp, but was always re-signed to the team because people get injured. Well, this year they kept him on the team, and he scores the winning touchdown, or he scores the tying touchdown, and so you can't kick extra points in the spring league. You have to run a play, and you can either do a 1-point try from the 3-yard line, a 2-point try from the 5, or a 10-point try from the 3. So they went for 1 from the 3. Guy runs it in, bounces up, runs off the field. He's like so pumped. And it's just an amazingly fun. It's just super fun to see the guys who, for whatever reason, either medically they couldn't ever get their act together until the league like left them behind, and so they're trying to get back to the league, or they've been there and something happened, and the league just didn't want them anymore, and they're trying to get back. They're trying to prove that they belong. It's just great. It's just great. And it's really inspiring, and it's really, I mean, you're like rooting for all these guys because you don't know them, because it's not like they're teams you've grown up with. It's not like you're rooting for the Bills because you grew up around Buffalo and your team was always the Bills. Or for me, where I grew up in the South, and where I grew up in Florida, and I have a vested interest in all 3 of the Florida teams, plus my adopted team with the Steelers. There's none of that. It's just you're rooting for guys because these are guys who are hungry. And there's not a lot of attitude because they're professionals, and they know if they have attitude, they're not going to get cut back to the league. And they're trying to do their best, and they're competing for their team, and they're trying to win. And it's just a beautiful thing to watch and behold. And if you just watch, and like if you don't get overly invested in the game, like I will tell you that my team is the DC Defenders. They won Friday night. That's great. I was actually had them on my phone right here as I'm like doing the videos. I'm looking down at the screen to check the screen. They won. But like, I mean, you can just root for the guys because it's not like college where you're like, where it's been around for 150 years or whatever. Or, I mean, I know college football, nothing's been around for 150 years, but you know what I'm trying to say. And it's like, and there's only 8 teams, and they're talking about expanding to 10 teams, which I hope they do. But it's just a beautiful thing. And the reason why it hasn't caught on as much as a lot of people have thought about is because, they have no attachment to these teams. Like I talked about with hockey. Like I talked about with my unable to get to attach to any team in the NHL. Because I know nothing about hockey because I grew up in Florida, and it wasn't a big thing when I was down there. I still don't know what it is because I don't know how much you know about Florida, but there's not a lot of snow. There's not a lot of ice. I mean, when it gets super cold, sometimes there's ice, but it's not like it is in Winnipeg or, in the Midwest or Minnesota or wherever, or in the UP of Michigan or whatever, where you're not getting all this winter storm up until like the middle of June or whatever. No, it's just like, you know about football. If you know about football, if you grew up watching football, if you've, then it's not too hard to get attached to this, and you don't have to get invested in it. All you have to be like, oh, there's a game on. I've heard about this. Okay, let me check it out. And you know, it's not like these guys. They're not all pros. Nobody out there is Peyton Manning. Nobody out there is Lamar. Nobody out there is Josh Allen. And nobody out there is Patrick Mahomes. But they're guys who have played with them, and they're guys who want to get another chance. And a lot of them are really good. Like Arlington has this receiver, a guy named Tyler Vaughns, who went to USC. Really great receiver. St. Louis has this receiver, Hakeem Butler. Just he's like freaking. He's basically Randy Moss. He's basically the Randy Moss of USL Help, like where you just throw it to him and the guy goes up and gets it type thing. It's just amazing to watch. And the defenses are great. You know, the Michigan team, like I mentioned, the Rams, where they have what's the guy's name, Puka Nacua. Well, his brothers play on the Michigan Panthers. He's a brother that's a receiver, and he's a brother that's a safety. And so he was at this game today, and he's like, and they're like, I mean, it's just a phenomenal. It's a phenomenal thing, and you know, there's franchise in Memphis. There's one in Birmingham. You know, there's one in Arlington, San Antonio, Houston, Michigan. That's in Detroit, which I think should be in Detroit. I think it should. If it's in Detroit, it should just be called Detroit. One in St. Louis, one in DC, like I mentioned. I think that's all. Yeah, I think that's it. And then they're talking about expanding, like adding 2 more teams this next year. I hope to do. And you know, there's speculation about where any of these teams are going to be. But I think they're going to put one in Ohio just to create a national rivalry with Michigan, and then maybe somewhere in because they've talked about Louisville, they've talked about Seattle, they talked about a whole bunch of places, you know. And I think Florida should have one, but you know, probably maybe New Orleans or Atlanta, or I mean, they don't have to be in like New Orleans, like because there's no team in Orlando. And so they could put one in, I don't know, Baton Rouge. They could put one in Lafayette, West Lafayette. They could put one in, you know, a lot of places. And that's what I wish they would do is put teams that are where, you know, like there's a team in Nashville and Tennessee, and so they put the CFL team in Memphis. So that's what I wish they would do is just create another place with like like they're talking about putting one, you know, in Ohio, you know, because there's Cleveland and there's Cincinnati already, so they're going to put one in Columbus. At least that's the scuttlebutt, and I have no problem with that. But anyway, not a whole lot happened. We back to spinning crystals down, so you know. Anyway, thanks for being here. If you're a mom, happy Mother's Day. Respect the hell out of y'all. Yeah, I do a lot of, because they're very underappreciated, and I appreciate everything you do. Now that you're still watching after I talked about football for however long, but appreciate it. Anyway, that's it. That's all I got. Appreciate all of you. God bless. Hold the line. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye.